Have you ever edited your photos with fine precision, zoomed way in and brushed in the shadows and added some highlights to feathers and fur? Well, in this episode, I'm going to show you some of the hidden secrets within editing your images to allow them to pop, to draw your eyes in, and really help enhance the image that you want. Sounds too good to be true? Well, I'm excited to show you what it is that I can do. If you are new to this channel, my name is Shannon and I am a full-time photographer in beautiful British Columbia. Whether you're here to learn, be inspired, or simply enjoy some stunning visuals, you've come to the right place. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos like this. First thing I want to mention is that this editing style does take a long time to go through. So I didn't outline all of those details. I'm just going to show you sort of the bookmarks of those, and hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense as we go along. So this is the image out of camera here. Of course, it's a little cockeyed, washed out, and I made these adjustments in Lightroom. Lightroom, I usually make more or less global adjustments, and I get it to a foundation where I'm happy to then further work on it in Photoshop, where really the real magic happens. Now, if we go to our global adjustments, really I brought down the highlights, up the shadows. I added a lot more vibrance here. And then I did make a specific mask over the duck here. And I brought up clarity and texture. And I also played around with some of the highlights and shadows. So this kind of gives me a platform to work on, and I know you can do more work in Lightroom. I just prefer Photoshop for some of those fine details, and my brain can organize it a little bit better. So let's go into Photoshop and you'll see what I mean here. This is my final image right here. And if we go all the way down to the very bottom, this is my import that we just seen in Lightroom. So what I do is I duplicate that layer just in case I do anything to this layer. I always have a backup. And then the first thing I do is kind of start working on either the shadows or the highlights. Here I started working on the shadows first. And how I did this was I grabbed a color layer. So I went down to my adjustments layer down here at the bottom. I went to solid color and I picked a blue, somewhere like that, sort of a navy blue, and I change that color. That's just a normal color. Up here you can select this drop down menu where you could give a different character to this color, like screen or lighten or dodge and burn. So this is more of a burn. It's called soft light, and it really darkens the dark areas. It also darkens the highlights, but it really focuses on the dark areas, and it adds that color into the scene. So blues are much cooler, which I like working with blues for cool shadows. And then for highlights, I use warmer color tones, and you'll see that a little bit later. So I pick this, and then of course when that layer mask is selected, it also gives me a layer mask, and this layer mask allows me to either remove it or apply it back into the scene. When it's white, it's revealing that layer mask, so it's showing it everywhere because the whole thing is white. The layer mask is white. If I hit Command I to invert it to black, black is concealing that adjustment layer, so you can't see it anymore. And so this is where I take my paintbrush and I paint in white paint to reveal that adjustment that I made. And then if I switch it back to black, it'll remove it, almost like you're adding it and then deleting it. So if I just go ahead and I paint, here you can see that I'm starting to add that layer mask in. So that's kind of a crash course of how I'm doing these adjustments layer. So we're going to delete this example that I have here. And that's what I did right here. If I turn it on and off, this is what I've added to the scene. And you can see on that layer mask here, whatever's painted white is actually showing those adjustments applied to the scene. If it's black, it's concealing it. So you can see that there's a bit of a mixture of white and black over the scene here. The next one, I added a colors adjustment layer again, and that color, I went from normal, which was up here at the top when I first selected it, and I went all the way down to color dodge. So if I did that again from the beginning, I went to adjustments layer, took a solid color, I picked something like this. It's sort of a sunset color, picked OK. Then I went from normal all the way down to color dodge, and you can see it really brightens everything up and it adds that color in. So that's what I did there. And if I turn it on and off, you can see where it's been applied to this image. And you can also see on this layer mask what has white. Some of the duck has white, but mostly up here in the sky and down here in the reflection of the water here. Next, I did a dramatic curve. So it's adjustments layer, and I select the curve graph, and I pull down the middle, which really darkened the whole scene here. And you can see that there's a lot of white paint in that layer mask. So I'm darkening a lot of this image and really honing in some of those details that you see in the feathers. So if I zoom right in here, back up a tiny bit, you can see that these feathers are really starting to pop here. Then I added more highlights, and you probably are wondering, like, okay, why didn't you do it all in one layer? Well, sometimes one layer of highlights does more of a global adjustment. So you're kind of brightening up more or less the majority of the background and the foreground. But I might want to do it again, maybe in a different color. Here it's a little less orange. And if we double click on it, you can see that it's more to sort of the gray scale or less saturation within this color. So it's really just brightening up the highlights. And then I can slowly hone in. That's why I like Photoshop. I can just keep adding layers, keep working on it. Okay, the next thing, you can see that I really popped out those highlights of the duck. And I even did a couple of the snowflakes there in and around. I do work on the snowflakes a little bit later elsewhere, but you can see the whole top part of that duck and the bill and some of the chest feathers. I've added a lot of those highlight details. Here I add saturation, and you can't really tell a whole lot when I turn it on and off. But there's a lot that I changed here. You can see that the vibrance is up 23% or plus 23, and saturation's up plus 22. If you look at the layer mask here, there's a lot of white paint here. There is some gray, which means I've applied it a little bit, but not too much. And some of the background, when you really crank the saturations, there's like purples and greens and stuff back there. And it starts looking sort of pixelated when you're enhancing all of those colors. So I didn't apply it too much in the back. I actually started removing some of that adjustment there because it was a little too extreme. Okay, the next thing is again highlights, which we see down here at the base of this duck, up and around the head, and then of course all of these snowflakes here. I just brushed those up to really allow the light to catch them as they were falling there. And then I come back in to really darken everything again. This is a curves adjustments layer. And again, I pull it right down in the middle. You can see that where I brushed white paint to bring out this adjustment, I was very specific. So you can even see up here again in those feathers here, where I've really added some darkness into some of the shadows. I'm going to zoom right in because this is going to get quite pixelated, which is fine. I've really darkened these feathers here. I'll show you right here what I've been doing. I'm taking my pen here. I've got a Wacom tablet. So this is my Wacom tablet, and this is my pen. The pen is pressure sensitive. So as I apply more pressure, it adds more paint, sort of like a paintbrush. If you had paint all over it, if you really pressed hard, you would just put blobs of paint. So here I can go ahead and turn the wheel, and it recognizes my finger being there, and it will open up my brush or close it in. So this has a lot of really cool functions on here that you can program it. If you're interested in the gear that I'm using, I do have all of my gear on my gear page. You can go to my website there to check it out. Okay, back to this. What I'm doing is I'm taking my white paint here. So I have my paintbrush selected. I got white here. Again, white is to reveal, black is to conceal. And I'm going to paint in really the dark shadows here. I'm going to up the opacity here. And I'm really just darkening in all the areas that maybe I adjusted too strongly with my shadow slider. And you know, there's some noise in there, and it's nice to keep things that are dark and not have them too bright. And darkening them just adds so much more depth, so much more contrast, and with contrast gives you sharpening. I'm able to sharpen those edges by having a white part of the feather stand out against the black, which gives it this really sharp look. And I've even done it down here to some of these feathers. So I'll even draw some of these lines down along here, darkening the areas that are already sort of in shadow and enhancing. Sometimes it's a little too much. You want to lightly tap, like I'm just barely adding pressure on some of these adjustments. And if it's too much, I can go up to the opacity and bring it down, so it's not applying as much. That's how I really add sharp details. Now this is definitely an extreme post-processing workflow. It's very important that you walk away from the computer, come back, and if it stands out too much color, too much contrast, maybe it's too dark, too bright, then I'll make some adjustments. Now the last thing I do, because there's a lot of contrast to this, is I soften it out a little bit. So this lens flare right here, if I go over to where I grabbed it from, this is what I'm adding to that image. I open it up in a different tab just so I can show you. What this is here is if I turn that off and I redo it, I go to a solid color, I pick black, go up to filters, go down to render, and I hit lens flare. Here's what I'm adding. So it's cool because Photoshop gives you some of these cool tools that you can use. So you can pick a lens type that you like. I like the 105 prime lens, and I'm moving this as far away and up to the top as I can. And sure, I'll keep it at 127, somewhere around there. There's my lens flare. Now, I don't like all of these sort of elements that give off these different little pops of color, which is common in lens flares when the sun hits it. So instead I delete a whole bunch of those, so I'm getting just this right here. And I didn't do a great job, I'm kind of moving a little bit fast, but I deleted a whole bunch of those, and I dragged this into my other layer mask right here, and I dropped it right here, and it asked me if I want to proceed. It's a different size. I said yes, blah, blah, blah. Here it is. And I dragged it down into place. And then since it's a normal layer mask that has a lens flare on it, by normal I mean like a black layer mask, I just went from normal down to screen. And screen just helps shine through anything that's black. And that's how I got that sort of light and that atmosphere, that softness to the image. Now, I thought it was a little bit drastic by just dropping this in. You might like it. Maybe you think it's a little bit too cool of a color. Well, you can select the layer mask here, and you can go up to image and down to adjustment. And if you go over to any of these adjustments, that'll change what this one layer mask is. It won't affect anything else because I'm selecting that specific layer mask, but I like selecting color balance. And here I can warm it up quite a bit. I can add some reds here, maybe some magenta, and this is just for midtones. I can go into the shadows, cool the shadows a little bit. Anyways, you can see here that it has changed the color of that layer mask. That lens flare is now a different color. So there's so many things that you can do on here. So there you have my quick steps. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this content, please give me a thumbs up. It helps out this episode and this channel. And if you aren't subscribed, think about subscribing. If you want to join me on some photography workshops, I'll have a link down below. You can check it out. And if you want to know how to make your images really tack sharp, I've got a free document you can check out. I've got a link down below as well. Thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you on the next episode. Ciao.